All right, so I've done tutorials on how to solo Legendary Hound of Zoriat and Legendary Tempest Spine because and these are really for those folks out there who are exclusively soloers and who are thinking to themselves, "Oh man, I'm never gonna get Threads of Fate. You know, I'm never gonna get those cool dual filigrees that you get with Threads of Fate." If you don't know what Threads of Fate are, they are like an end game raid currency, and they go into your green bag. And the way that you use them is just by double clicking on the Threads of Fate in your inventory, and it brings up a barter box. And there's lots of really great filigrees that are not only they work for multiple sets, but they also have double the bonuses that regular filigrees have. You can also get a Spark of Memory, a cosmetic headgear, but these here, like the Treachery, Twilight's Cloak, +2 to Dexterity, and there's at least one, if not two, for every stat that gives, +2 to a stat, which is awesome. But this works, for example, for both the Treachery and the Twilight's Cloak set. So you could have like 2 pieces of Treachery and 2 pieces of Twilight's Cloak, and then use this as the third for both, thus getting 2 3-piece sets out of 5 total filigrees. So it lets you get some pretty creative options in terms of, getting more filigree sets. But there's a whole bunch of these just delicious filigrees that you can get, like I said, have double the bonus of regular filigrees, plus they work for multiple sets, plus you can upgrade some weapons and stuff. So Threads of Fate. Oh, and then you can get your +3 and +4 upgrade tomes of MRR, PRR, melee power, range power, and spell power with this system too. You can also get Empty Soul Vessel, but probably just want to get that by farming out rare chests in Legendary Feywild. In any event, Threads of Fate are delicious. They come from endgame raid chests. And for those of you who out there who are exclusively soloers, you might feel like, oh man, I'm never going to get Threads of Fate because I can't solo a legendary raid. But some of these legendary raids are so old that they just don't stack up to modern standards. So like raids like Legendary Hound of Zoriat and Legendary Tempest Spine are very, very, very soloable because they came out like 9 years ago. Okay, and the power curve was in a radically different place in DDO 9 years ago. And so I just learned something about this raid, Fire on Thunder Peak, that makes it very, very soloable. And I don't know when they made this change, but what changed is that the dragons no longer need to be separated in order to be DPS'd. And that was the big impediment to soloing this raid. And it had been done before when it was like that, but it was really challenging to try to somehow get those dragons separate to DPS them when you're in here by yourself. So I wanted to show you guys, like, this raid, which came out in 2014, so it's 10 years old, is now very soloable. I'm just coming in here on normal to demonstrate. If you want to try it on higher difficulties, knock yourself out. But I'm just going to do it on normal. And this was a stealth change. I don't know if it's working as intended, but it did not appear in any release notes that I ever saw or remember. I feel like I would have remembered that one because that's a pretty significant change. But I'm just going to go ahead and bring them together. I'm going to drop out of elemental form because when I'm in elemental form, I have the ability to overcome immunities. But I don't think that you need to do that. So let's go ahead and bring the dragons together, see if we can demonstrate. So when they were this close before, you couldn't DPS them, but let's go ahead and hit them with a spell. It's hard to see the numbers. There you go, I just hit them for 13,000 with a Word of Balance. So, and they were right next to each other. So you don't need to separate them anymore, thus making Fire on Thunder Peak highly soloable. And like I said, because this is a 10-year-old raid, it's not a big deal anymore. These dragons don't hit as hard as they used to, or at least, relatively speaking. I hit the one dragon with a single spell and took him down to its threshold with a single spell. Listen Chart, good morning and welcome. Dragons are kind of slow, so it's pretty easy to back away from them. You know, if you're not a melee, if you're a range, you know, you can kite them. Alright, they take off, and now the big Volcanic Annihilator and Volcanic Devastator coming out. No big whoop by today's standards. Just waiting for the dragons to come back. Well, they're flying around. Let's go. This seems weird. This almost seems like it's bugging out. There we go, finally. Yeah, duoing this would have been an entirely different thing, because when you duo it, obviously you've got multiple people there to split the dragons up. But soloing it was extremely difficult. In fact, I never even knew how to do it. I had heard that D-Door could be used to get them separate for, like, you know, small windows of time. I never really gave it a serious try because I just don't have the patience or interest in it. But the fact that you can DPS them with the dragons together now is a major game changer in the solo ability of this raid. Okay, so now the dragons are down to 50. Our objective is to destroy the artifact. Okay, and the artifact is gonna have a force field around it, and then after about a minute, the force field's gonna come down. And then you can DPS it again. You can DPS it by about 20% each iteration. So at this point, we're not trying to DPS the dragons. It doesn't even matter, because, and that's once they get to 50. And they have big buffs called Artifact Overdraw and Artifact Overload. You're gonna see that right there, that little like fairy fire symbol, Artifact Overdraw. They do 400% damage with their physical attacks. So you're gonna want to try to stay away from them. You don't want to get hit by them at this point in the raid because they hit really hard. Okay, but DPS and the dragons isn't important at this point, because when the artifact is finally destroyed, they will both drop to 10% health immediately, regardless of how much health they had. So don't bother DPSing them at this point in the raid. And again, that's once the dragons drop to 50% health, and it's time to beat on the artifact. Just gonna take out a little bit of the trash. Okay, the artifact is vulnerable. So we're going to go ahead and hit that with a DAT. Looks like the dot may have taken it past its normal threshold. So I didn't realize that was an option. Just keeping the trash numbers down a bit. Not only can you get Threads of Fate from this raid, but you can also get a Death-Egg Runestone, which you can convert to an augment that gives runic vitality at the Soulforge system, and you can also pull Meridian Fragments from this, which is an orange caster augment that gives you a reduction on maximize, on using the maximize feat, as well as some additional spell power when you get hit. Okay, artifact is destroyed. The dragons drop to 10% health. And now we just finish them off. Bada bing, bada boom. Solo Fire on Thunder Peak. You can too. You'll get more chests on higher difficulties. Alright. And I got 13 Threads of Fate for that. Cacao. You solo this. Legendary Hound of Zoriat. Legendary Tempest Spine. Again, I do have videos for those. Every 3 days, you're going to build up your Threads of Fate. Bada bing, bada boom.